I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Hang on tight, race fans, and get ready for a show, because we always like to put on a good show. It's Motorsports Madness, right here tonight on Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. Good evening, race fans. I'm Jacob Seelman, the voice of Speed77, alongside my two co-hosts here at tonight's round. Tom Baker turning to a co-host's chair because Kyle Sue is off. Welcome back, our resident Australian, James Pike, and it's a pretty good week to have him back with us since we're going into Indy, and some guy he keeps an eye on has won a couple of times there. He's from there. He almost won an IndyCar race there. You know, we'll talk about Smoke a little bit later for multiple reasons, but I actually want to start with you, James, because we saw a lot of hard racing, but we also saw a lot of Mother Nature, and we saw a lot of rainouts this weekend as well, and unfortunately that kind of put a damper on everything that we're looking at for the weekend.
Yeah, because there was this small deal at Harris Motor Speedway that was the season opener for the ASCS Carolina Series that got rained out, and I was not necessarily happy about that, because I was really looking forward to that Saturday night, and now it's been a bump back and no fun for me because I won't be able to make it. I'm not happy about that either, but I digress.
Pikester digresses. I want to turn to owner of the ASCS Carolina Sprint Series, editor-in-chief at Race Chaser, my partner in crime, Tom Baker. Tom, as always, a lot to talk about. We saw a great nationwide race Saturday night. I wanted to see a whole lot more sprint car racing than we got in going into this weekend, but still a lot to talk about, and we star cast of characters always that's going to be joining us throughout the show tonight, and a new addition too. That's always fun.
Yeah, it's nice when you're expanding the Race Chaser Speed77 radio team, and definitely going to be fun to welcome in the new guy a little later in the show, and we'll just leave it at that for now. And yeah, it was, boy, if you were anywhere in this part of the country, it was just a soggy, raw weekend in the South. Really, really unusually cold and damp and raw for the summertime.
So, it was unusually cold, unusually damp, and I think that carried over to today and may still carry through to tonight, because I'm looking out my window here at Speed77 headquarters, and the sky is not looking pretty right now, and it wasn't looking pretty earlier because we got dumped on here in the Charlotte area this afternoon. Trying to race on a monthly. The trying to practice today did not happen because it rained and it was hot.
Yeah, it was definitely quite the day, but I don't think this show is supposed to be about the weather, so let's not let Mother Nature win, shall we? Let's talk about the racing that was.
Let us talk about it, and let us go right to the Windy City where there was no rain, Chicagoland Speedway, where we saw two fantastic races over the weekend. Want to start with Saturday night's race, the NASCAR Nationwide Series, because most of the Cuppies were taking a well-deserved weekend to go to Barbados or wherever Jimmy Johnson decided to disappear after he had such a terrible weekend at Loudon, and that left most of the Nationwide Series regulars open to a shot at Victory Lane, and wouldn't you know it, but one of them did get to Victory Lane. And James, I'll tell you, this kid, we had him on the show earlier this year. He has impressed the heck out of me, and he's beaten Kyle Busch twice this year, and Brad Keselowski, and all that assortment of characters, and now he proves he can win against his own kind as well, and even beat Kyle Larson to do it. Chase Elliott on a tear, grabs his third win of the season, actually ties Kyle Busch for most wins on the year, and reassumes the Nationwide Championship lead. How many talent-laden sentences do you want me to string together to describe what a job this kid has done this season?
I'm telling you, it's the chrome blue paint on the back of his race car. That's what makes him go so fast. But, in all seriousness, the thing that I've loved about Chase's run this year in the Nationwide Series is that, yes, he's good. Yes, he's talented. But he's gone about it in almost a very understated kind of way that reminds me a lot, naturally, I suppose, of one awesome Bill from Dawsonville that he may or may not have more than a few connections to. And it doesn't necessarily seem to be flashy. It just seems to be a lot of hard work and determination and skill and whatever talent that's in his body that he uses. But he gets the job done, and 3 wins already at this point in the season. That's not anything to sneeze at.
No, it's not, and it's not anything to sneeze about when you consider some of the competition he's been up against, Tom. We weren't sure what they were going to do, but now that we're halfway through the season, I can't not say that he's a bona fide championship contender and could very well become the first rookie in one of NASCAR's top 3 series to win one of the crowns.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, it's a little hard to rule that out. I mean, an exceptional young talent, for sure. You listen to the way drivers talk about Chase and how he absorbs information. I mean, DJ talked a lot about him on the broadcast the other day. Just an amazing, amazing young talent, and a driver who, honestly, I mean, I'll be a little surprised if he's not in the Sprint Cup car in 2015, if you want to know the truth. I mean, I would find it hard to believe he would run another year Nationwide, although, obviously it could happen. But Chase Elliott definitely has a chance at the championship, and, boy, what a future this kid has in the sport, for sure.
Absolutely. And futures in segue into what we're about in just give a call to Kyle. I overhauled him for the Kyle ran a great race. James, I have to laugh at you because of what you said before the show, but in a way it's almost appropriate considering where we're going Wednesday night and the fact that Kyle Larson was so sideways in the last part of that race. As you said, it almost looked like he was testing for Eldora.
Well, I mean, he did finish runner-up to Austin Dillon in the inaugural Mud Summer Classic last year, so I think you'd have to be kidding yourself if you didn't think that some piece of his mind was thinking about that race, especially since Kyle loves the dirt. He'll run well on pavement because that's what you do in America if you want to be a preeminent racing driver. You make the money in NASCAR, but I really think Kyle loves the dirt first and foremost, and if he's not licking his chops at the thought of going back to Eldora to get the win this year, then I think we might as well just go ahead and start building our bunkers for the apocalypse because everything must be wrong with the world at that point.
All right, we'll talk about Eldora a little bit later in the show. Tom, okay, so we were just talking about guys who have a future in the sport. Allow me to throw another name in this, and it's a driver who we've been waiting on and waiting on and waiting on and waiting on and waiting on, and son of a gun did he finally win an ARCA race after finishing second 6 times in the last 12 ARCA races. How about a to-do for Mason Mitchell, who not only wins the ARCA race, but I don't know who stole it from the other. One of them stole it from the other, and Mason Mitchell taking a page out of our good friend John Holloman's book and pulling the Superman pose in Victory Lane, and that was only the beginning, because what I understand, that literally lasted all night.
I don't know. Did Mitchell didn't have the Superman T-shirt? Did he? Did he? Was he wearing the T-shirt? Okay. See, I had heard he did some sort of a weird deal in Victory Lane, but I didn't know it was the Superman T-shirt. That's clearly a John ripoff there. No, I don't know who had it first. Doesn't matter. It's a cool deal, and Mason Mitchell. Again, what can you say about this young racer? Another driver who, all the second places this young man's had have probably totaled up to a little bit, I think, in some ways, of a lack of respect. And what I mean by that is, I think you look at some other drivers, and we talk about the Chase Elliott's of the world, but, here's a driver that just because he hasn't won a bunch of big races, this is a driver who's as capable of moving on in the sport as anybody, and I think the fact that he's been the bridesmaid instead of the bride so many times might have, in some ways, kept him out of some conversations that he might rightfully belong in. And, maybe now Mason Mitchell can take a deep breath and say, all right, that's out of the way. Now we're set to go, and maybe we can get on a little bit of a roll, and we'll see him win 1 or 2 more shows before the year's over.
I was getting ready to say right then, I don't think he's done. I think they just had to open the floodgate, and he takes over the points lead, wins the race, and he and Grant Enfinger are shaping up a pretty nice little championship battle now between the two of them. Frank Kimmel in third. I can't believe I'm saying this, but he's almost an afterthought at this point with the way these two have been performing.
Yeah, well, and that, again, that's not to take away from Frank's effort this year and the way that he's run, but Mason and Grant Enfinger certainly are two drivers who are who ought to be looked at for opportunities in NASCAR's Big Three. I'm happy for Mason. I'm glad to see him get off the stump, as Chris Berman would say, or get off the schneid, and put it in victory lane and kind of get over that hurdle a little bit, because you just had to think that after a while, when you come that close that many times, it has to just beat on you. So good for you, Mason, and hope that both him and Grant duel to the finish this year in that series.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be a great championship under the finish, and it's head this weekend. This is a fun race for them, isn't it? Lucas Oil Raceway, what used to be Indianapolis Raceway Park, for those of us that remember back that far. I think all three of us actually would fit into that category quite nicely, but you look at this, and we talk about wild card races where anybody can win, and this is one of those tracks because it's so unpredictable, and the short track mentality comes out in these guys. I mean, heck, a couple years ago when Frank Kimmel won the race, we saw the big one that took out like 10 cars on the front straightaway and forced a red flag for like an hour. What was then Speed at that point. I don't know if Fox Sports 1 would put up with that now, but, we'll see Friday night. But you look at this entry list. Brandon Jones is back, fresh off his win at Winchester. Matt Tifft, Kyle Weatherman in a Rulo Brothers car. Austin Self, who's come so close to winning this season. Of course, Kimmel, Schrader, Cody Coughlin. You've got the 99 with Kyle Benjamin in it. You can't predict this. And even Grant Enfinger, who's been so good on the short tracks this year, this is going to be a fun race, and there's about 15 guys, I think, that could win it.
Matt Tifft is a kid that I just, again, if you want to talk about who the next one could be, I think Matt Tifft is another one that's just getting really, really close, and I like his chances. But yeah, you're right. I think we've spent a lot of time on our shows talking about the K&M Pro East Series, and rightfully so, because it's so loaded with talent, but the ARCA Series no less so, and I think sometimes that gets lost in the shadow of the K&N Series in some ways, in the Truck Series and whatever, but this is a series with just a ton of competitive racers, and I think this race is going to be an absolutely awesome race.
I would tend to agree with that, Tom. And, I was just looking at this, and I can even throw the bone to James on this one, too, because I think I wanted to get in some. But one thing I didn't catch until right this moment, I talked about the other Venturini guys, and I didn't even stop to look. They've got the fourth car on the list this week, and would you believe who they've got back in the seat? Old J.J. Haley. Had him on a couple of times this year, and I'll tell you, the kid's doing a stand-up job.
He really is, and he's a neat little kid too. He's kind of a fiery kid and very intense. I mean, and that's a word that he used last week after the Legends shootout race here at Charlotte when I talked to him. Wow, that was intense. He had the biggest smile on his face. You can tell that he's just having a ball racing those cars, and JJ is definitely a young man with a big future, and he's driving for a team that obviously has a tremendous track record. And there's another young man that I think in the next year or two we're going to be seriously talking about in terms of truck series and maybe even nationwide as he creeps up in age just a little bit more.
James, you just poked my shoulder and with a pretty good point. And, we were talking about unpredictability. It's not just in this race, but look at the rest of this schedule. We've got a super speedway, so to speak, in Kansas to end the schedule. We've got 2 dirt races. We've got a short track at Salem. Boy, if anybody thought that we were done in the ARCA Racing Series and it was going to be all cookie cutters the rest of the way like so much of the NASCAR schedule is the second half of the year, hello, this is why we love this series.
Yeah. In addition to the dirt tracks and Kansas, you got Kentucky Speedway on there. You've got a trip to Pocono that will join up with the Sprint Cup weekend, I believe. You got Berlin Raceway, Madison International, just a lot of fun places. And I think if there's anything that really sets ARCA apart from every other discipline of stock car racing out there, it is the diversity of tracks that they visit over the course of the season. There is not a single series I can think of that can match what ARCA does on an annual basis. And I think that with the diversity of tracks coming up, it's going to provide a very, very good test for both Grant Enfinger and Mason Mitchell. Whoever comes out and actually wins the championship, I will like to think will have earned it over the course of these really, really, really different set of tracks. Granted, there might be some mechanical issues and accidents that may shape the championship race one way or another. I'm hoping that's not the case, but always could happen. But going to be fun, no doubt.
Yeah, it is. And the ARCA Series, of course, in action Friday night at Lucas Oil Raceway for the Scott Get Geared Up 200. That's going to be on Fox Sports 1, I believe, at 9 p.m. Eastern. Then ARCA CRA Super Series race leading into that old Kyle Busch is going to be in his super late model. So going to be interested to see how that turns out. And he doesn't win because he's won plenty of those super late model races to go around. But in all that, we're going to take our first caution flag of the evening, come back, talk some short track racing, and a whole lot more. Coming up on the Madness, which returns right after this. You are listening to Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. We'll be right back.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading materials supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
Steven, do you like dirt modifieds and sprint cars?
I sure do, Clint, but I like full fenders and late models too.
Whoa. What about the super modifieds up at the Steel Palace? You can find all of those and more with driver interviews on the Turn 5 Racing Podcast, released weekly on YouTube.com, Podbean.com, and on iTunes. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at Turn 5 Podcast. Turn 5 is a proud partner of Race Chaser Online and Speed77 Radio. Search Turn 5 Racing Podcast.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
Powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, and James Pike around tonight's round table with many more guests coming to join us here shortly, so it definitely no sense of loneliness at the table tonight. Tom, big weekend on the short track side too, though not so much on the dirt side because we got waterlogged, but definitely on the pavement side, and one of the biggest racing weekends of the year. Maybe not so much for what actually happened, but we had a lot scheduled, and far be it from me to say that it's not one of the biggest short track racing weekends of the year, because look what's up north, the Oxford 250 this weekend for super late models, and specifically sanctioned by PASS this year, as it has been the last couple years. And what do you know? We haven't had a back-to-back winner in a couple years. I think 2008, 2009 was the last time. I wish Kyle Souza were here to check I can't believe I'm asking somebody to check my stats on that either. You'd think I would know that. But anyway, I digress. Travis Benjamin goes back-to-back in the Oxford 250. He and Austin Terrio take on tires late and just basically steamroll their way through the field. With about 80 laps to go, they came calling, and basically it was a battle of whoever could get out front first was gone. Travis beat Terrio to the front, and he was gone at that point.
Travis really, how do you do that? I mean, the Oxford 250 is a pretty big deal, and that's not an easy race to win back-to-back. I got to commend him on that. There again, I mean, what an accomplishment for him to have two of those on his mantelpiece and on his resume is pretty special. To have them back-to-back is just flat-out amazing, and lots of competition in that race this year, and really turned out to be a good day for racing up there, too, thank God. Nothing like what we were experiencing down here.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a field it was this year. 44 super late models for the green flag. Preston Peltier jumped to the lead early. Unfortunately, he got jumped on at around lap 20 and just really could never get back to the lead. Joey Doiron was in the mix for a whole lot of that race, and believe it or not, the last caution coming at lap 220 basically set up a good old-fashioned sprint to the finish, 30 laps to go, and Benjamin grabbed the lead with 23 to go, and that was it. But even despite lap traffic, we thought Terrio was going to have a shot at him in traffic, and even Kyle Souza said late in the race that if Terrio could just catch traffic right, he would have a shot, and unfortunately just couldn't catch the traffic the way he needed to, and that was the difference.
Yeah, again, in a race like that, I think that's one of those races where you really just have to have it together from the beginning to the end, and you don't want to overextend, you don't want to ruin the race car in the early part of the race, but you really can't spend a lot of time sitting back in the middle of the field either. And boy, for Travis to get 2 wins in a row is very impressive. And the interesting thing that I was keeping an eye on in that race was I really wanted to see Steve Park get in the field. Steve is just one of those drivers. Everybody likes Steve. Such a good career, and he still, enjoys getting back behind the wheel of whatever he can, whenever he can. And he did end up having to make it through a provisional, but he did get in the field. So I was happy to see him start the race, even if it was on the provisional type of deal, I really, it's neat to see somebody like Steve still trying to have some fun out there.
Oh, sure, absolutely. And oh, by the way, a little bit of a sidebar on what a job Travis Benjamin actually did. He started 27th, raced his way in through a consi, and won the race. If that's not good, I don't know what is. 2 years in a row for Benjamin, and what a job he did. And, you know, we're talking about what a job people did, and you got to talk to somebody shifting gears completely now, but staying in the Northeast. Justin Bonsignor. We've been talking about him, Tom, all season long. He did a bang-up job and passed the defending champ to win on Saturday night at Monadnock Speedway. This is a driver who now has 2 wins on the year, 5 on his career, but I think we're seeing a different Justin Bonsignor than we've seen the last couple of years. I think we're seeing a driver who's consistent. He's finally not tearing up his equipment, and the Long Islander could be a championship contender this year.
You know, when I think about Justin Bonsignor, in the past, it's almost like he's one of these drivers that, you know, you wish you could just take the proverbial temperature gauge and just dial it down just a little bit. And it looks like somebody finally did that. They finally turned him down just a bit and got him just right on the aggression level. And good to see him having this kind of a season, and nice to see that he can. I think a lot of us believe that he was capable of it. But, you know, again, some of these drivers, it takes a little while, and that's a series where you just really, you know, the competition almost forces you to be over aggressive sometimes. And, you know, Justin's found that happy medium, it seems like, and I don't think he's done yet either. I think that's another driver that we're going to be talking about a couple more times between now and the end of the season, winning races. He's just having a nice year, and I think every time he wins a race, it just, you know, it makes him a little bit more relaxed, because now, okay, we've won 1, then we won 2, then we've had a second place here, so you know, I think you just become, sometimes success does breed maturity, because it just takes the edge off for you, and it gives you almost a relaxed confidence. And I think in Justin's case, that's exactly what's going on.
Let's talk about relaxed. I don't want to say confidence, because he just broke through, but I think he's a little bit more relaxed now that he's broken through. And James, I'll turn to you on this one, because this is a driver I think you and I have been a little bit intrigued, but Sergio Pena in the K&N Series East win over the weekend, this Motor Speedway, which has seemed to become a house for the NASCAR Drive for Diversity, and they've won 3 of the last 4 races there with 3 different drivers. Daniel Suarez last year, Dale Wallace Jr. in 2000. Now you see Pena break through this year, but for Sergio, he caught our eye first a couple years ago when he outdueled Joey Logano for so many laps in the Toyota All-Star Showdown, when that was the All-Star Race Pro Series out in Irwin. Kind of dropped off the map the last couple of years, did a stint out west last year that was really unproductive for him, and now it's back this year. Not great, but finally, after all this time, has found his way back to victory lane, and you that can do there.
Again, I think the most impressive thing this weekend was not necessarily the fact that he won, the way in which he won, because he spent the last 30 laps holding off one Cameron Haley, who I think our friends up north might know a little bit better. But regardless, that's a stout challenge that you're going to get anytime you come across that guy. And to be able to do that, period, I think deserves a little bit of a pat on the back, no matter... especially when Haley gave him his best shot. There was nothing wrong with the car. He was ridiculously quick all week. So credit to Pena and credit to the whole program. And it kind of just, the next one will be next West Pena. I believe one Kyle Larson may or may not have a few connections with them as well, if I'm not mistaken.
He won a championship for him in 2012. I call that just a little bit of a connection. But you mentioned names. I'm keeping an eye on Brian Ortiz these next 2 weeks in the K&N Pro Series East, because he's filling in for Suarez, who has headed back to Mexico to chase the NASCAR Mexico Toyota Series championship, and rightfully so, because he's no longer really realistically in the K&N East battle and wants to chase where he can win a Touring Series championship. So Suarez going to miss the next 2 races. Brian Ortiz, a longtime Rev Racing stalwart is going to be in that car, and we know that's winning equipment, and Brian Ortiz has been a driver who has been close. He really hasn't quite dialed in, I don't think, the right combination of what he needs over the last couple years, or maybe even the right set of circumstances when he does have a good car to be competitive. And I just think if all the pieces can fall right for him at one of these next couple racetracks, especially at Iowa, where Rev Racing's been solid, maybe not always win-worthy, but definitely very competitive over the last couple years, that it could be very interesting. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. I'm also going to be keeping an eye on the business we have to take care of right now, because we're halfway home in tonight's episode of The Madness. We're going to take another caution flag, and when we come back, we're going to go open wheeling with our resident wine and cheeser, Joel Sebastianelli, who's going to join Round Table and maybe have some food at his place for him, Tom. I don't know. Are we that nice? We'll see. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to Speed 77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. Stay with us.
The odds of a young girl being discovered by an industry insider while singing to herself pumping gas? 1 in 300 million. The odds of the daughter of a clergyman from Severn, Maryland spending 11 weeks at number 1 on the U.S. singles charts? 1 in 19 million. The odds of going on to win 6 Grammy Awards? 1 in 1.4 million. The odds of selling over 40 million records? 1 in 800,000. The odds of this musician and performer having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 110. I'm Toni Braxton, and I encourage you to learn the signs of autism at autismspeaks.org. Early diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference. Autism Speaks. It's time to listen. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
For every turn, a twist. For every start, an untimely finish. For every win, someone who loses it. For every number, a nation. For every celebration, a brawl. For every split second, years of work. For every heaven, a hell. For every good old boy, a good old girl. For every curse, a prayer. For every ounce of order, a jug of chaos. For every twist, there's a turn.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed 77 Radio,
Powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed 77 Radio and RaceChaserOnline.com. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, James Pike around tonight's round table, now joined by our resident open wheel wine and cheeser, Joel Sebastianelli. Central getting ready to kick off, and Joel, I'll tell you, if we've had a break in open wheel the last couple of weeks with both series not racing on the same weekends for the most part, this weekend was everything we could have asked for and then some. 3 races in one day, though not exactly intended, made for a great afternoon. I'm sure you were just in heaven all day. F1 in the morning, IndyCar right after again. Of course, the rain playing games with the open wheelers up there in Canada, but IndyCar doing a bang-up job to get both races in, albeit on the same day. And believe it or not, this was my biggest fear. All 23 cars started race number 2 after race 1 in the morning. I'm glad for that. IndyCar did a great job, and IndyCar saw what ended up being 2, I don't want to call them surprise winners per se, but it definitely stirred the pot just a little bit more.
I certainly wouldn't call them surprise winners either. In fact, I think in a way, particularly with Sebastian Bourdais, it's been a long time coming. He hadn't won since Mexico City in 7, but he's always been so strong at Toronto. Finished on the podium in the doubleheader weekend, has multiple victories at this circuit before, dating back to the Champ Car days. Particularly, I believe 2004 was the last time that he won, so it was about a decade in between these as well. Bourdais is phenomenal on the circuit, and of course, even though Mike Conway wasn't happy with the car in practice, you can never count out Mike Conway on any sort of a street circuit. We've seen it time and time again. The last time was Long Beach. Now ECR has 3 victories on the season, which is a great story in and of itself. 3 races in one day certainly wasn't intended between IndyCar and Formula One, but I was in Nirvana for about 10 hours or so. Great day of racing from start to finish.
Tom, he just used the word Nirvana. Word of the day.
Smells like Teen Spirit on the show all of a sudden, doesn't it?
I know, right? Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah, it really, you know what, it was a great day, to be very honest. I mean, you know, F1 was predictable, but it was good to see that there was so much open wheel racing going on in the day, and you know you're having an interesting day on a racing weekend when you see a pace car end up hitting the wall.
Oh, Ari. Yeah, okay, Joel. So, Saturday for the race.
That was on Saturday.
Yeah, it was on Saturday. But I do want to say something about it because it is humorous for me, old Ari Leyendijk in his little pace car, and it's so wet that he ends up in the fence, and I think that may have been the signal to IndyCar, hey, we can't run this race.
Yeah, you think? If it wasn't Ari Leyendijk spinning out in the Honda Accord pace car, it would have been Will Power slamming into the wall, and Briscoe tapping the tires, and all the troubles that these drivers were having coming up to speed. At first, it's very easy to be on the bandwagon and say, well, they race in rain all the time. Why can't they race in rain here? But there were a couple of factors, and one thing was visibility. Now, yes, there's spray bouncing off the walls, and it makes it more difficult, but I don't think that part was really much worse than it would be on any other street circuit. What the real issue was standing water. That's why the Honda pace car spun out with Ari Leyendijk. That's really the issue that these guys were having. So it's very easy to knock IndyCar for everything that happened Saturday. For one thing, you can't control the weather, and I always feared this was going to happen with a doubleheader weekend. Thankfully, it ended up working out okay on Sunday, and you got 2 races on the same day, which I think was great for fans, especially if you were there in Toronto. But you have to play with the rules sometimes if you're IndyCar. In a way, nobody likes a stickler for the rules. As consistent as they need to be, and they're not always consistent, sometimes things are going to happen that you can't really account for in the rule book. New Hampshire, that restart is a perfect example. There's no rule that said that after they restarted that race on an oval in the rain and half the field wrecked on the front stretch in an absolute farce of a restart, there was no rule that said, we can just go back any lap we want and make that end the race, but they did it because they had to. It was unfortunate circumstances that they shouldn't have ever been in, but they were, and sometimes you need to adjust for that because rules always be applied the same way all the time. And if they aren't there, obviously, they can't be applied at all. So you can look at the red flag rule and say that you can't operate on a car under a red flag. Well, that's fine. But I think if you're not going to start the race, and before the race even starts, you've got cars spinning, and you said, you know what, we can't run this race right now. We simply can't do it. It's our mistake. We never should have put you out on the track. I see absolutely no reason that Will Power shouldn't have been allowed to work on his car. You want to move him to the end of the field? Yeah, I guess that's fine. I could also understand the argument if you want to leave him where he is, but I think it's okay to let guys work underneath a red flag in that condition because the race hadn't started. Likewise on Sunday when you had the pile up on lap 1 after the race had started. There's no reason that Joseph Newgarden should have been allowed to work on his car, and he was penalized accordingly per the rule book, much to the chagrin of Sarah Fisher. So that's just the way I see that. Everyone's screaming at each other and wearing their tinfoil hats about Verizon conspiracy, but I don't really see, if Will Power wins the title, I don't really see how much that really even would help Verizon. You think that the CEO of Verizon has Derek Walker by the throat in the IndyCar paddock at Toronto? He's got way better things to do, and I just don't think it's any favoritism at all. If this was another car, like let's say Carlos Huertas in IndyCar said, okay, well, you can work under the red flag condition because we haven't started the race, and we made the mistake by letting you you guys go out onto the track when cars are hydroplaning and there's so much standing water, it gets looked at completely differently, in my opinion.
I'll take that, and I'll also say, Joel, that, you look at some of these incidents, and you posted a picture, actually, last night on Facebook, and thank God that this wasn't any worse than it was, but you talk about the wet track and conditions. There were a couple times during that race where I think that maybe a caution flag may have a couple of cars from being torn up as badly as they were, and this incident in particular, just because of the way it happened and how quick the concrete actually was down in the hairpin, but thankfully Michaela Lotion not hurt any worse than he was, because the tire mark on the front of his Hefter, he was literally underneath Juan Pablo Montoya, definitely could have testified differently.
Well, I don't think they really had much time to throw the caution. It hadn't been raining that long. The track just got really wet really fast in that one section track. There was no spray coming up behind the cars. It had just started, and just touching that concrete there was enough to spin guys around. So I think that was just an unfortunate incident. But a couple incidents came to mind for me. Road America, Brian Herta and Alex Barron. It amazes me that Brian Herta is still around and wasn't beheaded in that crash. Really, really bad. Karun Chandhok and Jarno Trulli at Monaco, I believe 4 years ago in 2010, when you've got the tires right up by the cockpit. There's been a few incidents like that, and maybe it's time, and I haven't really decided whether I advocate it or not, or how I feel about it, but we know that Formula One has tested with certain forms of closed cockpit technology. It was just a couple weeks ago at Silverstone when Max Chilton had his head almost taken off by a tire. Going at full speed, mind you, a tire that had come off of Kimi Räikkönen's car in that first lap incident. Is it time that we maybe start considering closed cockpits, or is that just part of the inherent danger of the sport? I really haven't decided on that, but I would be curious to see if maybe that conversation ramps up again, because it's been about 2 or 3 years since I've heard any mention of it. Maybe that talk starts getting a little bit more steam, and it may not be 5 years from now, but 20 years from now, I can see how open-wheel racing becomes closed cockpit racing, even though it's still open-wheel. I can see it as a possibility.
Thank you for mentioning Kimi Räikkönen, by the way, because that segues perfectly into one of my next points. And, we talk about how terrible a season that Kimi Räikkönen actually had in the Formula One this year, to shift gears over to the other side of the pond. But one of the comments coming out in the wake of this past weekend's event, Fernando Alonso actually urging Räikkönen that he needs to improve. He said earlier today to Spanish Sports Daily, in the Constructors' Championship, we've lost a bit of ground to Williams, which they did. They lost third place to Williams. Who would have expected that after this weekend? He says, we've only been able to count on one car again, and we have to improve on that. Kimi has to improve on that. And I think this is the first time in a while I've seen one teammate get so irritated to the point that he's just going to call out his team car and not really care what consequences might come from it.
I don't really think there'll be any consequences that come from it, because Fernando Alonso's absolutely right, and he's the one who's got Ferrari on his back right now. Just look at the points. The points breakdown. Alonso has 97 points. Kimi Räikkönen has 19. It's like they're not even on the same team, and it's not as though he's had mechanical failures that account for all this stuff. In fact, he's only retired from one race, and that was because of the incident that we just mentioned at Silverstone on that opening lap. Kimi Räikkönen's got to pick it up. He said he's not going to race past his contract year next year, but he's just having so much difficulty adjusting to this new car. There were so many changes in Formula One. These cars don't drive anything like they did in 2013. They're not that similar at all. And it's the same thing that's happened to Sebastian Vettel, just on a much lesser degree. Now, Vettel's had 3 retirements, and he's still got 82 points, but he still trails Daniel Ricciardo's 106, because Ricciardo's up in 3rd place right now, and Vettel's been having some of the same issues that Räikkönen has, just not to that degree. Part of it's Ferrari performance. Ferrari hasn't been nearly as good as they'd like to be this year, but Fernando Alonso is still putting them in the top 5 at most races, with 1 podium to his credit at the Chinese Grand Prix. Räikkönen's got to step it up. I still think he's a great driver, although I do think maybe he's past his prime. These guys just have to get used to these cars. There's a reason I think that the younger guys who don't have anything to compare it to, like the Russian, for example, Daniel Kvyat, Kvyat's right up there, multiple retirements, but he's running up at the front in the top 10 and battling for positions before things seem to go wrong with that Toro Rosso machine. The younger guys are doing better than some of the older guys because they're not used to driving that other car, I think. There's a sort of creature of habit nature to it that these younger guys don't have to deal with that these older guys absolutely do. Now, maybe only a couple of examples for that. Maybe I'm reaching, but I think that's very much to blame for Kimi Räikkönen. Very much to blame, but not a good excuse.
All right, real quickly, a couple of points here. One had a terrible crowd in Germany on Sunday morning. I was completely shocked by that, and somebody asked Bernie Ecclestone where the fans were on Sunday, and he said pretty bluntly, obviously not here. And then, we look at that 50,000 fans estimated versus somewhere along the lines of close to 125,000 a couple weeks ago at Silverstone, and you've got that, and combine that with Niki Lauda describing Mercedes rivals in 2014. He says, quote, "McLaren has the same engine as us, and the car is, to put it nicely, crap. The same with Ferrari. Another car just like that." So you look at this, Joel, and Niki Lauda, obviously you look at that, and when Niki speaks, people tend to listen, and he said it pretty plainly over the weekend.
And he's been speaking a lot more this year than he has before. He seems to be opening his mouth up a lot, and whether you agree with him or disagree with him, he tends to make a lot of good points. The crowd was awful. Now, I'm not going to get into a real discussion over how Formula One needs to change and adapt to fans, but there is a changing culture, as Lauda said himself, with the way fans are coming out to Formula One races. You had somewhere in between 120 and 125,000 at Silverstone, like you mentioned, and the German Grand Prix is a mainstay on the Formula One calendar. It should have more than just over 50,000 people. So exactly what that attributes to, I'm not really sure, because there was inclement weather at Silverstone and the fans were still packed. There were as many fans there on Friday as there were at the Grand Prix this Sunday in Germany. As for Mercedes, another great weekend for them. Lewis Hamilton certainly would have liked to have been better than crashing in Q1, and he still made his way up to third place. Valtteri Bottas, second place. Williams is doing quite well. And of course, Nico Rosberg with a well-deserved victory. Victory at his home track, in his home country, with the home team and home manufacturer. Great stuff for Germany. Been a great couple of weeks for that country, sports-wise. Fortunately for Felipe Massa, though, I think he deserves a bit of a shout-out, too. If it wasn't for no luck, Felipe would have no luck at all, flipping over on the first lap after making contact with Kevin Magnussen. Purely a racing incident on the first corner, but you wonder how much of that has to do with the nose design, too, as opposed to just simply clipping the wheel down there in turn one. Something to think about in terms of car safety, too, for Formula One.
Tom, did Joel just make an indirect soccer reference on the madness? I mean, not that I care or anything, but wow.
To the World Cup? That was direct. Although,
Okay,
speaking
fine.
of direct and indirect, I think this is actually worth mentioning, too. FIFA and the FIA would not allow Nico Rosberg to put the World Cup trophy on his helmet due to branding issues. So instead he had to settle for the stars, with each one representing a German World Cup victory. Had to do that, just when you thought that these huge sanctioning bodies couldn't get any more unlikable, they have to do that. He can't even put the World Cup trophy to honor his country for their great sporting achievement 2 weeks ago.
The wine and cheese mentality kicks in again.
Do we need to get him a silver platter out here too, Tom? I mean,
well, I don't know
geez,
what else
really?
you're going to put cheese on. A paper plate?
Well, no, that wasn't. That wasn't meant at Joel. It was meant at the idea of not being able to put the doggone World Cup logo on your helmet. Give me a break. I mean, could as Joel has it right. Could as if it couldn't be any more unlikable. Last year, who was it? Vettel did donuts and everybody objected. Now we're complaining about somebody wanting to put the World Cup on their helmet. Come on. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
I just want to say that in regards to this whole World Cup helmet thing, I don't think Lewis Hamilton would have any problem with FIFA and the FIA coming to that conclusion, because as far as Lewis is concerned, I don't even think he's sure that Rosberg is German to begin with. So maybe a little bit more fuel to the fire for this wonderful championship battle that's been taking place throughout the season? Maybe.
I'll leave Joel to ponder that one.
There was too much made of that story. I wonder how much these guys really care about what the other one says of them. Quite honestly, I think we use the word distraction. Are these guys distractions to each other with the stuff they say in the media there in race? I do believe them when they said they put a lot of their previous strife behind them. I don't totally believe them. I think there's a little bit of garbage in that statement somewhere that's a little bit untrue, but, Nico understands that I don't think Lewis really meant it that way. I can't believe I'm coming to Lewis's defense for saying something like that, but Nico brushed that right off, and I think he's heard far worse things, even from his teammates' mouth, than that. But it's shaping up to be a great battle, and Lewis Hamilton by no means is out of the championship race. Just 14 points. It's certainly a good gap to overcome, but with half the season still to come, that's certainly doable. And don't forget, with Hungary coming up this week, Lewis Hamilton is tied with Michael Schumacher for the most wins ever at this track with 4. 07, 09, 2012, and 2013 with Mercedes-AMG Petronas. So he's at one of his best tracks in Formula One, and I bet he can get right back on track this weekend.
Thank you, Joel, as you just right there took my pick for this weekend. But, I mean, when can you not pick a Mercedes car this season? I mean, Tom and I have hashed it out enough. It's kind of getting a little bit ridiculous, save for Daniel Ricciardo in Canada, but that was completely out of the blue. And, I think it's Mercedes the rest of the way. But then, what do I know? Somebody could surprise us. Joel, as always, appreciate you coming on. I know you'll be looking forward to Hungary this weekend, and I'm definitely looking forward to the rest of the IndyCar season. After an off weekend this weekend, they head to Mid-Ohio next weekend, where we saw Charlie Kimball, of all people, win last year. So you want the poster child for anything can happen in the second half of the season? There you go, right there. We're not done yet.
Certainly looking forward to IndyCar when it comes back at Mid-Ohio in the first week of August, and looking forward to Formula One, too. It's been a great season for Formula One. There's been plenty of action all throughout the field, and you've got a great battle up at the top of the team that deserves to be there. If you want to just look at a different opinion that differs from a lot of people, check out Jill DeFerrin's article in Racer. He does an article with every single edition, and he says exactly what I've been saying all along, that if you're the best, you deserve to be there. All these extra rules that try to enforce parity cheapens it a little bit. It cheapens the accomplishment. Mercedes deserves to be up, and they deserve all the credit in the world for having similar equipment to what all these other guys have and still dominating week in and week out for a reason.
All right, Joel, I'll take that from you before we spark Tom back into this argument and say we'll plan on seeing you next Monday for the Madness After Hungary. And as always, try to stay dry down there in Florida. I say stay dry, but you guys usually get more rain than we do.
Yeah, but when all but 30 minutes of the day are spent under sunny skies, you really can't complain, right? A bad day in Florida is better than just about anywhere else. But wherever you may be and whatever racing you may be watching and partaking in this weekend, be sure to enjoy it and stay safe.
Final caution flag coming up right now on the Madness. We'll be back. You're listening to Speed77 Radio, powered by Race Chaser Online. Stay with us.
With our patented Hex-Tech grips, Cobalt tools are tough to put down.
Try it now.
What are you doing up there, Jimmy? Welding, Chad. Get in the car. Pipe wrench. Hey, Jimmy.
Cobalt tools, tough to put down. Available exclusively at Lowe's.
For 17 years, Stock Car Steel has been a leading material supplier to the racing industry. We're proud they're a Motorsports content partner here at Race Chaser Online. The biggest names in NASCAR trust Stock Car Steel for raw materials such as carbon steel, chrome moly, DOM, aluminum, plastics, and much more. You can't build a race car without the basic materials, and Stock Car Steel is the place to get them. Don't forget to also visit Stock Car Steel's sister company, SRI Supplies, for racing and industry. SRI is the place to go for all your shop supply needs. Nuts, bolts, rivets, tapes, adhesives, cutting tools, chemicals, body shop supplies, paint shop supplies, lubricants, and more. A well-stocked race shop is a winning race shop, and the path to winning begins with 3 letters, SRI. For more information, visit stockcarsteel.com or SRI-supplies.com. Check them both out on Facebook or call them toll-free at 1-888-752-7272, 1-888-752-7272.
At Peak, we're the independent guys, running a family-owned business. Nothing like big oil. Where American-made quality and value go into good, honest oil, with everything your engine needs to run right for the long haul. And what gets our motor going is using 65 years of experience in hot and cold protection to give you what's right for your engine and your wallet. Because we're car guys, like you. Peak. Run true.
I'm Jacob Seelman.
And I'm Tom Baker.
You're listening to Speed77 Radio,
Powered by Race Chaser Online.
We are your home for motorsports.
Welcome back to Motorsports Madness here on Speed77 Radio and RaceChaserOnline.com. Jacob Seelman, Tom Baker, and James Pike around tonight's round table, and as we always do, we got a little long-winded in Open Wheel Central, but, you know, we hang on and continue onwards, and to do that, we head right now to our dirt segment, and I don't know where Steve-O went, but I think he had so much fun the other night doing Turn 5 Live for the first time that he's lost track of time or lost his watch.
Well, I could go somewhere else with that, but I'm not in a mean mood tonight, so we'll just move along, and we got to welcome the new guy.
Yes, we do. We do have to welcome the new guy, and I want to be the first to give a huge Speed 77 welcome to Mr. Kyle Magda. Kyle going to help us out with the dirt tonight, and it was actually at the Summer Nationals at Williams Grove over the weekend, so certainly going to give us a lot of insight, as Steve and Clint do every Monday night on this Outlaws show. And goodness, believe it or not, Kyle, you were telling me during the commercial break that it was your first dirt show ever, so welcome to the initiated club, the Summer Nationals at Williams Grove. Certainly a bang-up show to be your first.
Yeah, first off, guys, thanks for having me tonight, and yeah, absolutely. You know, I never seen the World Outlaws, and since it was Steve Kinser's last season, I mean, I was thinking, why not go out there and see him? But, you know, but all in all, it was a great night. You know, we didn't get any rain, thankfully. It was fantastic. I'm shocked by, like, how fast those cars are. I mean, they're zipping around the track, and, you know, by the time you blink, they're the next corner, so. But, you know, yeah, I mean, I was kind of didn't really get, like, it worked. Like how, like, each segment there's like a C main, a B main, an A main. You know, there's warm ups, and then they qualify each car. You know, then that's how I line up for their heat races, and you know, it was an interesting thing. And early on, you know, Darren Pittman was coming off some momentum. You know, he just won the night before at Lincoln Speedway in Pennsylvania, and actually in the spring he won both nights at Williams Grove Speedway. So been the favorite coming in. You know, Pittman drives for Casey Kane Racing, and you know, watching him throughout the night, I mean, I thought he was going to win, actually. You know, he had a good run in the A-main. But, you know, going back, they actually had the dash to set for the A-main is that Joey Saldana wound up winning it. And actually, early in the A-main, he was the guy to beat. Actually had a 3-second lead at one point. And then he caught some lap traffic. Don't know whether he used his car up or not as much in those first 15 laps or so. But Brent Marks, another Pennsylvania driver, ran him right down. So, And then there was a caution coming out. I think there was a wreck between Cody Dara and Kerry Madsen. And Madsen, I think, even went upside down for just a brief time. I didn't really see it from the grandstands, but yeah, so that stopped the race a little bit. And then right after the restart, Joey Saldana, I don't know what happened, but he got passed by both Brent Marks and another Pennsylvania driver, Greg Hodnett. So
that's called not going.
Just Joey Saldana. I don't know if his car just did not move or what, but it seemed like he didn't have that speed like he had in those first 15 laps or so. So, and then, actually Greg Hodnett made a move on Brent Marks and took the lead, and, it was pretty much between those two guys and Greg Hodnett, who actually is originally from Tennessee, but he now lives in Pennsylvania, wanted to win the race. And it was a pretty popular victory with the fans because they were cheering afterwards. And Brent Marks finished in second. It was a 1-2 for Pennsylvania drivers. So, yeah, definitely a great night. No rain. Because what I heard was, I wasn't there Saturday night, but I heard they ended at about 1:30 in the morning on Saturday night. So.
Yes, they did. They ended up at about 1:30 in the morning because of a 3-hour rain delay before the last chance race. And Tom, I want to turn to you on this one because hello, Pennsylvania posse. I think Darren Pittman pissed the posse off just a little bit on Thursday night when he won at Lincoln. They were bound and determined that wasn't going to happen again. You talk a posse sweep Friday and Saturday at Williams Grove, and give a call to Lance DeWeese, too, because he's a driver who has not won with the Outlaws in quite a while, actually becomes the 19th different winner of the season, and it did a really impressive job, and we talk about this all the time, the Outlaws versus the Posse, the Outlaws versus the Posse, and the Posse's decided they've had enough of the Outlaws beating up on them in 2014, because I think the Outlaws had been undefeated up to that point.
Yeah, Lance DeWeese has been around. It was funny because when I was looking over the weekend's results there, and you talk about Lance DeWeese, I thought back when I was first in, it seemed like and maybe it was not too long after at late 80s, early 90s at some point, I was first breaking into motorsports media. Lance DeWeese was just getting into sprint car racing, and I remember buying a DeWeese t-shirt. He had a really cool looking t-shirt, and I don't even know where we were in the world, watching him race, and bought a t-shirt. He's been around for a long, long time, and I hadn't really thought about him in a little while, and I was really excited to hear that name and see him doing so well still. The Posse really put it to him this weekend, didn't they? And it just goes to show Pennsylvania, everybody talks about the Midwest and brags on that in open wheel racing, but as far as dirt sprint car racing goes, there's no tougher region in the country. None, zero, zip, nada than Pennsylvania. And those guys know how to get it done. The Outlaws come in there; they better be bringing their A game. And yeah, you're right. I think they got a little upset that they were about to get beat on their home turf again, and they just took off on throughout the rest of the weekend. I was happy to see. Happy to see the way that all turned out, to see the local guys have some good runs and give the crowd something to cheer about for the home folk.
Yeah. And you talk about home folk because we had another basically home folk, if you can call somebody from Connecticut the closest thing to a New York Outlaw. Sunday, the Outlaws go and hit up New York State, and hello, Roth Motorsports at Lebanon Valley. David Gravel for the 4th time this season and the 3rd time with the Roth Motorsports camp after they parted with Tim Kading. He's in victory lane, and what a job this young 20-year-old Connecticut driver has done so far in 2014, Tom, because that's a guy that we didn't expect to do a whole lot this season, and he's come and surprised everybody.
Yeah, he really has. I mean, it's and I don't know really who would have expected this kind of performance, to be honest. I sure didn't, but I'm happy for it. I mean, it's good to see some of these drivers kind of emerge from the shadows a little bit. And one of the beautiful things I think about sprint car racing, especially World of Outlaws sprint cars, you just never know from night to night or week to week who we're going to be talking about. I mean, right off the bat this year, we talked about Steve Kinzer. This is the farewell tour, so to speak, for Kinzer race. then next thing you know, we're talking about the next guy. I mean, and Sammy Swindell propped up a couple weeks ago with his surprise announcement about really focusing on the Knoxville Nationals. Then we talk about Lance Deweese. Then you talk about, Tim Kading or whomever it might be. It's just, that's the thing about the World of Outlaws. There are just so many stars, and they travel around to some of these regions like Pennsylvania, and again, some of the home folk are just as capable of pulling big wins as the big guys are. So I love the fact that we can talk about so many different people in a season on this circuit, and not just the same couple, 2 or 3 guys all the time.
And right before I turn back to Kyle, do want to throw something else at you, Tom. The Outlaws Wednesday night are going to be at one of your favorite haunts. They're going to Fulton.
Yeah, man, and I got to tell you, if there was ever a race that I would love to see on television that isn't, for those who have never seen the Fulton Speedway, it is a big old high bank track. Used to be a pavement track, and I don't even remember how long ago it became dirt, but it was probably, I'm going to say mid-'80s, maybe early 80s, I'm not sure. But it makes for some unbelievably good racing. 2, 3, 4 wide, these sprint cars will go crazy at Fulton, and I wish I could be there for that. If there was ever a dirt show in Central New York, other than obviously Super Dirt Week, that I really regret that I can't be up to see, that would be it right there, because that's going to be a great show, and I hope everybody in New York State and even anywhere around New York State that is within driving distance of the Fulton Speedway goes and catches that show, because that is going to be a killer race.
Hey now, they're only supposed to go 4 wide on the wave lap. I don't know that I want to see them 4 wide in race conditions.
Well, I don't know about 4 wide, but certainly 3 wide. There's a lot of racing room on that track. And, of course, depending on the track condition, that could be one of the most exciting races of the year for the World of Outlaws up there. I miss Fulton as an asphalt track, but boy, it's an amazing dirt track.
Yeah, it is, and certainly one that I see this season. But of course, you look at the Outlaws, Donnie Schatz still leads the points, but that gap's shrinking to Darren Pittman. And I know Kyle was initiated with the Outlaws this weekend, but that's not all you've got to talk about. There was some other short track racing that you got the chance to bring to the madness tonight too, Kyle.
Yeah, I sure did. I went to Jennerstown Speedway in Pennsylvania for the Super Cup Stock Car Series. Also, there were 2 Twin 31 late model races, and that was a great show there. And I'll tell you what, I'm surprised we did not get rained out that day. There was pretty much hit and miss light rain the whole day, and it looked like it was going to be iffy. There were bands coming through, and we got it all in. The later the night went, the better the weather got. So I'm very grateful for that. And actually, the backup plan was if we got rained out in Jennerstown, we were going to go to Williams Grove. So I'm kind of glad we didn't do that. After hearing about 1:30 in the morning. So. But back to Jennerstown. I mean, that was the first time I've ever been there, and that is a great track. I mean, I've known ASA has run there, Busch North, Wheel of Modifieds have run there. That is a fantastic facility.
I heard Tom say Super Modifieds. What?
I was going to say that was a great track for the ISMA Super Modifieds for quite a while. I loved going to Jennerstown. We used to go every year, at least once for a little while there when the Supers were running there. So I'm glad you got to see that, and I'm glad it's back open again. It was closed for a while.
Yeah, sure. You're dating yourself, Tom.
But you know what? But yeah, like you're saying, Tom, it's great to see that facility back open. Actually, one of the series that was there, like I said, Super Cup Stock Car Series, they were actually supposed to run there in May, but they got rained out. So this is actually I just want to bring this up quick. There was some unfortunate news last week. Evergreen Raceway Park near Hazleton, PA, actually stopped operations. It's unfortunate that happened, but originally the race was going to be there, but then there was some things that got worked out and got canceled at Evergreen. This was before it closed last week, and they moved it back to Jennerstown, and that was a great race. What Super Cup is really is those old Hooters Pro Cup car cars from the back in the day. They put on a great show. I don't know if any of you guys know, Cody Rohrbaugh actually runs that series. And he was just running the K&N East race at Loudon last week. And, and he's here at Jennerstown this week. And, early on I thought he was going to really just steal the show. He went out to about an 8.7 second lead in the first 30 laps or so. Kind of reminiscent of what Saldana was doing at Williams Grove the night before, just driving away. And, there was some wrecks in there. And then I know the one driver, his name's Howie Kong, he actually tried to pass Rohrbaugh on the one restart. Actually, he tried to get under him, and he dive bombed into turn 1, got loose and lost the car and wound up tagging the wall in turn 1. So that ended his night. And just toward the end, there was some great racing with Rohrbaugh and J.J. Pack. Pack actually leads the points right now in Super Cup, and they put on a great show. They were side by side for about the last 5 laps until Cody Rohrbaugh slipped up a little bit and hit Pack, made a little contact, but Rubbins racing, and Cody Rohrbaugh led every single lap, and he had to work for it too. It wasn't just handed to him. But yeah, that Super Cup series, you guys ever get a chance to go watch them.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle or Tom, you may even know this, but I think the difference between Super Cup and the old Pro Cup car, they're using basically the old Pro Cup cars with steel bodies on them. They've not switched to carbon fiber.
That's correct.
Fiber.
That's correct.
Yeah, there was a split in the ranks when Pro Cup decided to go with the carbon fiber bodies. Excuse me, there were a handful of teams that had the steel bodies that just simply didn't want to do that, so they went off and formed their own series. And I've always thought that was highly unfortunate, to be honest, because basically you've got 2 series with about 10 or 12 cars when you could have one series with 24. The folks from the Super Cup Stock Car Series are really nice people, and they probably put on fairly good shows, but unfortunately, it's just never taken off to the degree that they've built full fields. And like I said, now the current X1R Pro Cup Series, again, you got 2 of those now with half a field when you could have one with a full field. So I've never quite been able to figure that out, but nonetheless, sounds like it was a good show there. And yeah, I used to love Jennerstown. That's just such a raceable track, and it's a fast track. Stan Lasky used to run that track, and really did a great job there, and made everybody feel welcome. And I remember, I don't know if it's still there, but there was a place there called Eaton Park, and everybody used to go there before and after the races. It was a great place to have a kind of a Denny's sort of place. I think IHOP actually owned it, but Jacob, the Super Cup Series certainly putting on a show there, and they don't have a ton of races on their schedule, but they do usually run pretty well at most of the tracks they compete at. A lot of them right now are in the Midwest.
Yeah, they have enough to make it interesting, though, so always fun to see and hear about a little bit of different racing that we normally don't get to hear about here on The Madness. But got 2 things to close the show with tonight. We've got, of course, our traditional lightning round, where we'll go around the table and hit on a couple of quick points that we've not hit on. And then, because it is Brickyard 400 weekend and was so nicely suggested to me earlier on in the show by our resident Australian, Mr. James Pike, we will make picks for this weekend's Brickyard 400 because I feel like it and we can, and because it's the Madness and it's fun to change things up once in a while. So, couple of quick points. Tom, I'll start with you. NHRA was in action over the weekend as well, and up on the mountain to start race 1 of the Western Swing, Bandimere Speedway near Denver, Colorado. And, when you talk about being a couple thousand feet above speed level, or sea level, I guess it is kind of speed level up there, so to speak. But you talk about these cars behaving differently, and if you can figure out how to run well there, chances are you'll continue to run well there. John Force Racing, Alan Johnson and the Mopar camp over the years, they figured it out. Johnson actually winning for the 6th time in Pro Stock over the weekend. Robert Height beating boss John Force, who was the number 1 qualifier. In Top Fuel, J.R. Todd, of all people, goes to victory lane, and Andrew Hines in Pro Stock Motorcycle getting his 4th of the year. So you look at these guys, and I didn't think we'd be talking about J.R. Todd, for goodness sakes, but, the Western Swing is known for producing surprise winners, and we saw that again this weekend.
Yeah, and I don't really know why that is, Jacob, but you're right. It has always been known for first-timers, and not sure what there is about it. Just something about that part of the country. Maybe they something different in the types of I don't know, asphalt that they use for the track. I really don't know what to attribute that to, but it was good to see J.R. Todd get a win, and interesting height over Force too. I really would have put my money on John Force there, but definitely a good weekend of straight line racing there for sure.
James, he would put his money on John Force every weekend NHRA raced if he could get away with it.
Hey, I have no problem against betting, or problem with betting on John Force, because he may or may not share a certain birth date with a resident Australian that likes to partake in the madness every Monday night. So a little bit of a fondness for him, and for new British Open champion Rory McIlroy for the same reasons, incidentally. But I digress.
Okay, Tom, new point back to you real quick on the NHRA side. Erica Enders-Stevens announcing on Sunday morning that she's actually going to sit out the next 2 races of the Western Swing before the countdown to the championship, so her team can get better prepared for the U.S. Nationals and everything that goes on with the 6 races towards the countdown to 1. She's the points leader. First time in my memory that I think that's ever happened in any top-level series except... a memory that James would be quite fond of. Mark Martin in 2007.
I missed this. This is the first time I'm hearing of this. I guess I got so focused on everything I was doing with the Sprint Car Series, I looked at the results but didn't really pay attention to the news part of this. So explain that. She explained it again. She's sitting out for what reason?
Okay, Erica Enders-Stevens and her Elite Motorsports team announced on Sunday morning they're actually going to sit out the next 2 races on the NHRA Western Swing because they want to put all their focus into getting their equipment and their team ready for the 6-race countdown to 1, NHRA's version of the chase for the championship, basically, and they're ready to focus on a championship, and she's got almost a 2-race lead in the points standings, and actually her team owner said on Sunday afternoon, he said, with the way we've been this year, 4 wins, I just want to focus on being able to win every one of the 6 races in the countdown and really focus on the U.S. Nationals, which we haven't won yet, but they fully expect that if everything falls right, they should still be the points leaders by the time they kick back in after the Western Swing is over.
Interesting. I've never seen a race team voluntarily give up points races that they could have had to prepare for a playoff. I don't know. I mean, I guess that's okay. It's probably smart on their part. I mean, it's sort of the equivalent of an NFL team resting its starters for the last couple of weeks of the year, I suppose. Except that the whole team just doesn't show up. But well, that's it. I mean, that's an interesting strategy on their part. I'm not so sure that it necessarily is so cool from a fan's point of view that one of the stars is not going to be at the next couple of races. But interesting. That's new to me. That's hopefully that pays off for them. But sometimes, when you stop for a couple of weeks, you can lose your momentum too, and everybody else keeps learning and keeps going, and you stop. So we'll see how that works out. That's intriguing.
Isn't it, though? All right, James, I want to turn to you for the last point in our lightning round, and then we're making picks for Indianapolis. But the point I want to make immediately following the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports show on Wednesday night, which is, drumroll please,
one of the best ideas NASCAR's had in a long, long, long time. But to most people, it's known as the Mud Summer Classic, or at least will come to be known since that's what they use. But yeah, should be a lot of fun. Lots of guys are getting out of whatever commitments they usually have to show up in this. Favorites, just going off the top of my head, you got last year's winner Austin Dillon. You have Ken Schrader, who just runs all the short tracks and the dirt tracks in the Midwest and will be a factor. Younger brother Ty is going to be there. Runner-up last year, Kyle Larson's going to be there. Jeb Burton's going to be in the truck again, which is nice to see.
Michael Annett.
Michael Annett, I could go on, but I won't, because then we'd be here till about midnight. So,
all right, I want to turn to both you and Tom James real quick, and maybe get Kyle in on this too. I wasn't going to, but I have to because it's Eldora. Who do you like, Tom?
Well, here again, before the show, when I happened in here, you were going back and forth, and you did the one of you, I forget which one, went out on the 2-inch limb and picked Austin Dillon. I refuse to play the game of picking the favorites because, after all, Norm Benning took a checkered flag and got in the show last year at Eldora. So I'm gonna say 2 words here. That's all I'm gonna say. Bubba Wallace.
The boss has spoken. And James, how can we forget about Norm Benning, who won the LCQ last year? That was just beautiful, and if we have a moment like that again this year, I will cry with happiness because NASCAR will have succeeded again, sir. What's your pick?
Can we have more LCQs and heat races and NASCAR races, please? That would be nice.
Every week, please, yes.
Yes, thank you, NASCAR. I guess I'm going out on the 2-inch limb because although he did not win the race last year, I have a very hard time seeing him not being the favorite in Vegas when we get to Eldora. I want the Ninja. I want the California Kid. I want Kyle Larson on Wednesday to take the win.
Cal Ninja.
Ninja.
All right, Kyle, I want to turn to you on this one because Eldora is fun to talk about. It's different. Everybody loves it because it's different. You got a favorite for this weekend? Or I guess for this weeknight, so to speak. I'm so used to saying weekend around here.
Yeah, it's such a stout field there. There's just so many names, like you guys have been saying. It's outstanding, and and last year as well. But I look at the entry list. I was thinking Kyle Larson, but since James took Kyle Larson, I'll probably go Austin Dillon. I was actually surprised he won last year. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I know he had a good truck, but I thought Kyle Larson was the one to beat last year. But I can't go with Larson. I guess I'll go with Austin Dillon. He's actually just run a different number this year. Probably. I mean, I know he doesn't. I don't think he has the same truck he had last year. But Austin Dillon's good on the dirt, so I think I think Austin Dillon is probably gonna be one you're gonna want to watch, and I'll go with him. Might make it 2 for 2 here in the Mud Summer Classic Wednesday night.
I like that pick, but I like my pick too because he was in the news last year during the Mud Summer Classic, and it's not because he won the race. It's partially because he's an older gentleman, and partially because he did get a little bit of a nice souvenir to go home with, even though he was not as much of a factor as I would have liked in the race. But he's one of the best on dirt there's ever been, and I just want to see him win a truck race one more time. I'm going Ken Schrader to win the Mud Summer Classic after sitting on the pole last year. And I'm not convinced he won't do it again.
I think I would absolutely jump out of my skin if Kenny Schrader won that race. Kenny's just one of these people that he's a legend in the sport, and he goes so far beyond NASCAR. He transcends any one division because he's been great on dirt. He's been to Indy. He's been in NASCAR. He's been in short track stuff. I mean, Kenny is just an all-around great guy, and I would love nothing better than to see Schrader get it done. So, and I'll tell you just real quick, I picked Bubba Wallace just simply because this is one of those races, we talked about this last year going into the event, it's an equalizer. They only do this once a year, and yes, obviously the guys with dirt experience and other stuff have an advantage to a certain degree, but these trucks run so slow at Eldora compared to what we're used to. I mean, they're just not, it's not built for them. So it equalizes everything. And Bubba actually did okay there last year. I think Bubba's going to surprise people this year. And I went with the upset because I think if anyone's capable of pulling something off, it'll be him. And that would be a heck of a party if old Bubba gets it done.
You think? So, Mud Summer Classic main event going to be going on Wednesday night, immediately following us right here on the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports show. You can flip over to Fox Sports 1 and catch the trucks on dirt the one time a year we get to do that. But now, real quick, we're going to talk about what I like to call in NASCAR as one of, not the, but one of the granddaddies of the year. I won't say granddaddy of them all because that's reserved for Knoxville. But anyway, I digress again. Brickyard 400 weekend, and we've been talking about a lot of guys. And James, I want to start with you because I know what you want to say, but I don't know that you're actually going to say it because he's had such an off year. You usually like Tony Stewart in this race. He won a sprint car race last weekend in Michigan. I mean, we didn't even hit on that, Tom. Tony got back in a sprint car over at Tri-City Motor Speedway in Michigan and won in his debut back in the sprint cars. Yay.
Smoked him, didn't he?
Smoke has risen. Anyway, back to the matter at hand. James, Brickyard, go. Who do you like?
Well, even though Tony has an average finish of just about 8 and 15 career starts, and does have 2 wins, 7 top 5s, and 11 top 10s, 14 top 20 finishes with 227 laps led, an average finish somewhere right in the neighborhood of 13th. I'm going to hold on that because whenever I pick somebody, they usually end up getting jinxed. So I'm going to pick somebody that I think needs a jinx. As terrible as that is going to sound, and looking at average finishes, there's a very, very wonderful target sitting here right in front of me with the 5th highest average finish amongst all drivers. Also, side note here, Morgan Shepherd is 3rd all-time on the list. 4 starts, average finish of 10th. That's hilarious. But I digress. I think I will say that, at least on the record, Kyle Busch will win at Indianapolis.
Wow, I like James' line of thinking there. And what's funny is, at least this year, he's been right with the jinx thing, Tom.
Well, I don't think Kyle Busch is going to be very happy about that pick.
Oh, well. That means we'll get to hear lots of expletives when he does something stupid.
Kyle's calling him now.
Anyway, all right, Tom, you're up. Who do you like for the Brickyard?
Well, Tony Stewart's the sexy pick because, obviously it's a track where he does well in the whole Indianapolis thing and sprint car race. So will he now rise and cup and get a win there? But that's I'm not going with that sexy pick, mostly because James already hinted at it, although he didn't say it. Over the other sexy pick. Jeff Gordon gets another Brickyard win this weekend.
Please take a bow, Mr. Gordon. 4 wins all time, and I would like to see that, actually. We talk about Jeff all season long. He's waiting for career win number 90. What better place to get it than at one of the tracks where he not only has been so good over the years, not only is it almost like a hometown crowd for him, but he basically built NASCAR at Indianapolis because he was the fresh face who won in the inaugural race. Oh, by the way, this is the 20th anniversary weekend at Indianapolis, so that in itself is going to make this weekend one to remember as well.
But can we fix the racing at Indianapolis, or do we have to save that for another Monday night?
I think we have to save that for another Monday night. They're not done fixing the apron yet.
Okay, Jacob. So now, we've got a Kyle Busch and a Jeff Gordon, and Jacob says...
And Jacob says we're forgetting about somebody. Remember, I go last. So, Kyle, who do you like?
Oh.
Yeah, there's a few picks you can look here. You have Ryan Newman won last year. You have Casey Kane, Tony Stewart, the sexy pick, as you guys say. I don't know. I mean... You have 4-time winner Jeff Gordon. I'm probably going to go with another 4-time winner at the Brickyard, and that is Jimmy Johnson. So, either with Jimmy Johnson, either he's been feast or famine there. Either he's been really good, or he has wrecked or crashed or blown up or something. So, I think Sunday's race is going to be a wild card. And I'm just wondering, like you guys have been saying, I think in the past, I hope. But, it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out. I'm going to go with Jimmy. I'm going to go with the 48 of Jimmy Johnson, and he's going to look for his 4th win on the season, and because him and Brad Keselowski are tied right now with 3 apiece. So hopefully, look for Jimmy Johnson to get his 4th win of the season on Sunday.
I'm going to talk about 4s here, but it's not in the sense that everybody's going to think, because Tom, you're always harassing me about not going out on a limb or going out on the 2-inch limb. Well, you know what? I'm going out on a limb here on this one. But if you want to talk about... Really? And you know what? You want to talk about sexy picks? I'll give you a sexy pick, and it's not because of his record at the Brickyard, because frankly, that sucks. It's his record this season. I'm going with the guy who's not going to become a 4-time winner at the Brickyard, but he's going to become the first 4-time winner this season. He's the hot hand of ladies, won 2 of the last 3, make it 3 of the last 4. Brad Keselowski gives Roger Penske something to smile about at the Brickyard. He's got 15 Indy 500 wins. Now the captain's going to have a Brickyard 400 triumph to add to that trophy case.
I lied. I didn't know where you were going. I thought you were leading up to a 4 as in 42, and I was going to say that was going to be my upset special with Kyle Larson. That car is fast every year. It just never finishes. But then again, Juan Pablo's not racing it anymore. So I'm gonna say that if there's going to be a dark horse, what a great track this would be for Kyle Larson to get his first Cup win at. And this is the kind of a track where he just might be able to pull it off.
Okay, fine, I'll give you that one. But, you know, that car's got a good record, just not in the finishing column. All hail Juan Pablo Montoya, who chokes at Indy every single year. And, you know, we forget about old Juan. I was just talking about Penske cars. By the way, he's back.
In the number 12, I believe.
Ding, 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 ding.
Also, another point that has just crossed my mind, but if Brad does manage to get it done this weekend, then we might be talking of this summer for him in terms of one large Round Mounds magical summer of 2005, in which he won a stretch of, I believe, 3 out of 5 races, didn't finish worse than 6, and pretty much leapfrogged off that to the title that year. I wonder if the same might happen for Bad Brad this year, the way it's been shaping up so far.
I like that thought, and you know, at the rate we're going, anything's possible, isn't it? But with all that being said, we have hit the bottom of the hour, and our time is up on tonight's edition of Motorsports Madness. Want to say a huge thanks to our whole cast of characters for coming and joining us tonight. James Pike joining us for the whole show. Joel Sebastianelli, as always, on the open wheel side, and of course our newest snag, Kyle Magda. Kyle, appreciate you coming on, and hope for many more shows here in the future. But for right now, we're going to send this one all the way home. And for my partner in crime and our entire cast of convoluted characters, for Tom Baker and all of us at Speed77, I'm Jacob Seelman. Race fans, we have got a big week ahead of us, so stay tuned. We'll be back on the air Wednesday night for the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show. Big night ahead on there. We're going to have Mason Mitchell on. We're going to have a special that we did recently with Ryan Reed going to air on Wednesday night leading into the truck race. We're going to recap the Oxford 250 with Kyle Souza. We're going to talk to Sergio Pena. Just a very star-studded night in the wings for the Stock Car Steel SRI Motorsports Show Wednesday night. But you'll have to tune back in right here at 7 p.m. Eastern for that. For now, I'm Jacob Seelman. Race fans, keep it off the wall until we meet again. We'll see you at the racetrack. So long, good night, and be safe.